Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another edition of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I'm your host, TJ Zwarich, editor-in-chief of agentsofandom.com, ready to talk about some Secret Invasion. You know, I probably should have a different title, and maybe we should swap or something like that, because I don't edit shit. But I'm also joined, as always, by my co-host, the director of content and editorial, one of the guys who does all the editing, Garrett Blaney. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I hit some traffic on my way back, so I was worried I was gonna be late for this, but I wasn't. So not a scroll confirmed. Excited to talk about this, and I had some mic issues the other day, so I'm excited for you to be able to communicate, for me to be able to communicate with you guys.
It was so nice hearing your voice as soon as we came on here. It feels like we haven't been able to chat for so long. It was wonderful. And speaking of doing lots and lots of editing as well as so much else here at agentsofandom.com, Adam Blevins, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here with you guys to finally get to talk about some spoilers, like get into some actual details. I feel like we've all been pinned up holding this stuff in for the last week, just having to like stick to things like, yeah, it's great, the tone's great, performances are great, but like I'm excited to actually sit down and talk about some specifics and everything. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to get into it.
We have a very special guest today, first time on the podcast. This man's a absolute expert when it comes to Star Wars, so we're gonna have to bring him in here when Ahsoka comes around again. But also a huge Marvel fan and a friend of ours, Jordan Maison. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
We are very excited to have your insights and dive into this show with you. We got a lot of content today, so I'm just going to get us diving right into it here. We'll talk, before we even start talking about Secret Invasion yet, we're going to talk a little bit about San Diego Comic-Con and how all of these panels just aren't happening anymore. And so before we even get into that, make sure you hit the like button if you are watching us on YouTube here. And if you are listening on the podcast form, thank you so much for doing so. Rate us 5 stars. Leave us a nice little review if you're on Apple Podcasts. And those who are live with us on Twitch, thank you so much for tuning in live. And make sure you interact in the chat, have some fun. And make sure you also tune into all the other wonderful podcasts on the Agents of Fandom Network, including Fandom Academy, Ticket to Reality, Listen 3000, of course, us, the Agents of Fandom podcast, and tomorrow, if you're listening with us live, and already out on YouTube and on the podcast feed, if you're listening to this in podcast form, the debut episode of Cinema Sibs, covering some Indiana Jones in preparation for the new with the new movie, hosted by Rachel Leishman as well as her brother. And I've listened to the first episode. It's a whole lot of fun, so make sure you tune into that one and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Let's talk about San Diego Comic-Con, because Garrett, I was busy the other day and you were the one who brought this up to me, and we were originally salty. We didn't catch some dates in time to get some proper access, but now we're feeling a little like obviously disappointed for the situation, but at least on that front, a little silver lining.
Yeah, I complained about that initially, but then I felt bad because there's all these people that are like a lot farther than I am who did get press passes, did make arrangements, and are kind of shit out of luck now. And to those people, that really sucks. And it's a bummer. And I wish, you know, I wish we would just pay the writers and end the strike, and I feel like we wouldn't be in this scenario. But what the hell do I know?
With the impending SAG strike and obviously the current writer strike, it does seem like one of those things that I didn't like see it coming by any means. I didn't think of that. That just didn't really cross my mind. And but in hindsight, it's like, ooh, that does kind of make sense. I know Britt, who's in chat right now, was planning a trip, and now hearing that news must have been just was very disappointed. And so, shout out to Britt. We love you, and sorry that happened. Jordan, were you planning on doing this at all, going to SDCC or anything like that? And what are your thoughts on the news?
I mean, in the past, before the pandemic, we'd always sent people. I haven't been able to go for one reason or another. And I kept getting, with our stuff, I guess it's nice because we're pretty much, because we've been approved in the past. They just send us an email saying, "Hey, you're approved again," and we don't really have to do anything, which is nice. But at the same time, it's like I didn't have anybody to go this year, so it kind of, it's not bad. In that, we weren't really planning. We always cover it, just even if it's just from home, but we weren't really going to have anybody there this year. And then when the news came out about that, I guess I wasn't terribly surprised. I know that everybody was expecting Marvel to go big, and rumors of fantastic forecasting and stuff there. They always go big for Comic-Con, but I mean, with the strikes going on, and the Actors Guild now looking more than likely like they're going to strike if a deal isn't reached, it's like, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, even for the projects that are done, the actors aren't going to come out and be able to talk about it because they're going to be on strike. They're not going to want to come over for a convention to talk about projects when they're currently in a strike. So I know that they have stuff. I mean, there's Captain Marvel coming up the Marvels coming up this year. Armor Wars is pretty much wrapped filming, and other stuff is still filming. Echo, all that stuff that they could talk about. I saw a bunch of that online, that they could talk about stuff that's coming. But if you don't have actors or creatives that can come out and talk about it, then it's still not going to work.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the thing, is with the upcoming SAG strike, is like, without the actors, they're not going to be promoting their stuff. Is exactly like you said. A lot of these cons are in jeopardy, and let's pay these damn guys. I'm with the chat right now. Hopefully this gets settled before New York Comic Con, because that's when I believe we got 7 different agents attending. I believe I'm planning on making the trip to New York. Adam, I know you are too. San Diego Comic Con, you weren't going to be there, but I know this is something for you that you were very, very excited to follow.
Yeah, I mean, it's really disappointing for a lot of reasons. Shout out Britt in the chat, who, like she said, NYCC. Hopefully the news is coming in. I can't wait to meet her and so many other people. I'm excited to have the opportunity to go and do that. That's going to be great, and hopefully Marvel makes up for it a little bit. I know we've heard there's no Hall H size panel there to maybe do that same level of event, but hopefully they still give us something to make up for it a little bit. But it's so devastating to do this at all, to cancel it at all, but especially just like this time frame on it, a month before it happens. Like, so it's too late for a lot of people to cancel flights, to like ask back off for that time that they ask off work, or to like try to get back that time they ask off work, the PTO, cancel hotels, like any kind of stuff. A lot of it's like, it's locked in now, like at this point. And I feel so bad for all those people. And then just like, I mean, for everybody watching at home, obviously it's incredibly disappointing. We were all looking forward to watching this and covering this and being excited about it and together. And hopefully we're still going to get some fun stuff to go along, but it does seem like it's going to be really dry this year. And then, like you guys said, with the impending, the SAG strike as well, with the writer strike continuing, it seems like we're just headed into this really unprecedented era where I don't know if writers can't write and actors can't promote and doing all that. It's like, well, what kind of, eventually, like, until they strike these deals, what kind of work is actually like going to be happening that's worth happening? Like, probably none. So I just hope, it seems, unfortunately, like there's no end in sight right now. Like, I can't be like, man, well, at least they're talking about this. Like, I wish there was something I could point to that I'm like, wow, at least they're talking about this, that it looks like in late July or whatever it might be. Well, like, no, we don't have anything. We have no idea how long this is going to go on. So that obviously adds to the angst and everything. But I'll just be glad when all this is behind us. And I hate it so much for everybody who had their trip ruined by it.
Shout out to the bathroom lines that will inevitably be shorter, though, because I hear that those are terrible.
The bathroom lines, the drink lines, and honestly, at Calgary Expo, the biggest thing that I found that was the most annoying wasn't the specific line, but was just the difficulty of getting from one side of a room to another, because the whole building was essentially a line on the Saturday. And so while obviously the situation sucks, hopefully the people attending can still find some kind of silver lining from the experience. I think our fellow agent, Brandon Moore, who will actually be joining us for our episode 3 breakdown of Secret Invasion, said it best in chat. Pay the writers. They're the backbone of the entertainment industry. There are no movies or TV shows without them. Absolutely, and it's going to be the same thing with the upcoming actors strike. Like you can't have anything without without the actors, and so hopefully they get this done very, very quickly. But I think it's time for the Agents of Analysis because we got a big, big show. Secret Invasion is here, and we got a lot to talk about. I personally love this first episode, but before we even dive into the specifics, before we get into spoilers, you can find our general thoughts as well as who we really thought stood out in the cast, spoiler free in our episode from last week. Make sure you check that one out on the podcast feed. And then in terms of this week's episode, before we talk about the content that we saw, I want to talk about the intro first because this is one of the things that has been grabbing so many headlines with the fact that they used AI in the intro for Secret Invasion. I want to talk about a few things before we kind of give our opinions on it because I've seen a lot of very understandable and properly placed outrage over this on social media, but I've also seen a lot of misinformation being spread about it. And so I kind of want to clarify what happened before we dive into our thoughts about it. Marvel Studios reached out to a VFX company called Method Studios, who has done work on multiple projects, including most of their Disney Plus shows. And this team, same size team that they usually hire for their Disney Plus intro credits, decided to pitch a tool using AI as a tool with their own concept art to try and make it artificial and eerie to match the tone of the show. And so the issue I think of this is even if it's not necessarily as bad as some people thought it was, where it's like, oh, they're just trying to not pay people and so they did this. Well, no, they actually still outsource the work the same as they normally would. This is just what the VFX company decided to do. The issue that comes into this is the ethics behind AI in general. And so for a full piece on this, you can check out agentsofandom.com, where our own Ryan Cortero wrote a phenomenal piece on the ethics of AI art. So make sure you check that one out. But what this comes down to is, one, during the times of strikes and more artists of all kinds, writers, actors, and visual artists needing more work, using this at a time with strikes looming and just the potential that AI can bring to the industry in terms of taking jobs away from people, it's worrisome. It looks terrible and it's not great. The second thing is, while full disclosure, I don't totally understand the how all of it works exactly, but I'll throw it to everybody else as well, so their insights will be appreciated. But to get this stuff to work, even if they're using their own art to adjust from, my understanding is the coding behind the AI, this is still pulling from things all over the internet without consent. Even if it's not the artwork shown on the screen, even if that isn't stolen from anybody else, that's still the VFX artist's work. How the AI learned to adapt these different things is still from stolen work throughout the internet, is my understanding of this. Jordan, I want to throw it to you first. As an artist, what was your thought process, one, when you heard all of this, and then kind of two, after learning most of the details?
I mean, it's interesting because, a lot of us saw it last week, when they sent out screeners for the press. And I remember even then a lot of discussion, in private groups and chats. We were trying to figure out if it was AI. Like, it looked like it was, but we weren't entirely sure. And then, of course, they didn't respond to any messages about it until today when it was out. And we found out that it is indeed AI. And it's so crazy because it has fully dominated any conversation about the show itself right now. And I don't necessarily blame people for it. It's super frustrating. And the problem, and yes, how you described it is essentially how it is. But even there's definitely reason for concern, because you're training, even though they're using their own art and concept work and stuff to train the AI for this specific purpose, ultimately down the road, they're at the end of the day, they're still training it to do something that will ultimately could replace them. So, they do this for 2-3 shows. They have the same artists, teaching this AI how to do different stuff for their intros. And at some point, what if Marvel just says, you know what? The AI's learned enough. This is going to handle all of our intros now. And and so even at that point, the artists are still cut out of the loop. And it may not be immediate, like people have talked about now, but it could be, it's a slippery slope because it's something that could cut out the artists down the road. And for, as a lot of people pointed out, for a company like Marvel, whose whole business is based around the idea of telling stories with art, it's kind of shitty. And yeah, the optics are just terrible on it right now. Especially just a few months ago, Marvel fired that one. I can't remember.
Victoria Alonso.
Victoria Alonso.
Yeah, and she, all these VFX people came out with horror stories about, her and how she forced them to do stuff, and so we've heard nothing but bad stories about Marvel VFX and all of VFX industry right now. The crunch time and the work that the workload that they have is just killing them. And so to turn around and do this, even though it's the same in-house company that are using their artists and stuff, it still looks really bad. Because again, you always have that thought in the head, is like, are they essentially just training it to replace them later so that they can cut out that VFX group? And it's just it's certainly a choice. I don't understand why they made it that way. But yeah, I've seen. I mean, that's about the only discussion I've seen online when it comes.
Can I ask the panel something? Do you guys know if there's a VFX/artist strike that I'm unaware of that is causing, us to the studio to be doing this right now? Because it's
they're just not unionized. That's the thing. The VFX industry isn't unionized, and they've been pushing for a union for years, and people have been talking about how VFX companies need.
They own the coffin right here, maybe.
Yeah, this would be a good reason for it.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it's an interesting thing when you look at the credits. It's like the main title's produced by Method Studios, and it shows all the different artists on it, and then one of the artists is the AI technician, which is, I'm assuming, is just kind of the people just pushing a button and saying, all right, next, what do we got here? But it definitely doesn't look good, especially with the looming strikes. And Garrett, I think that's a great point with the VFX industry not being unionized, and when it what it comes down to, why are all of these people treated so poorly with poor time crunches? It's because they're a bunch of individual companies trying to make as much money they can, and so when they get a project from a big company, they just say, yep, great, we'll get it done because we need the contract. And so a union for that group would be, I think, a very, very important addition to the industry. Garrett, I want to throw it back to you, because you looked like you had something else, and if you don't, then never mind.
I mean, it sets a bad precedent. I agree with Jordan, and if we're able to cut X amount of time out of the VFX process, which is, basically most of the argument against Victoria Alonso and in that whole situation was we're overworking these publishing houses, and that's speaks to what you said, TJ, is that we're not unionized, so we can say, we're a big company and we won't give you any work if you don't do this to our deadlines, crunch. Well, if we can knock off X amount of hours with this AI art, well, we can suddenly come in under these deadlines with a lot less money, and it's a lot more feasible, and we're screwing a lot more artists out of, that time of being paid to work those hours. So it's a horrible precedent, and it's even worse that it's coming out during, in the midst of the writer's strike, right as the SAG is about to strike. It's horrible timing as the studios are placing all their faith on AI writing scripts and hiring writers after the strike to fix them up. It's just the optics are it's just really bad. And then I think to come out and say, well, it's part of the tone of the series and it's but like I think that's a really just a load of bullshit, to be honest with you. Like just cop up to it and be like, yeah, you know what, this was a bad idea, it's releasing at a horrible time and the optics are bad and we are not going to do this again. And then I think we can go on and enjoy the rest of the show, which, like we've all said, we've enjoyed, but now it's hard to, the discourse is not allowing that the audience to enjoy it, which should be a fun week-to-week discussion about theories and all this shit. And we can't have that because now we're just worried about this AI thing. And now we have, on the first day of a release, we have, definitive statement of, yeah, we did this, it's on purpose, and it's because it's matches our agenda of what the themes and the tones of the show. That's kind of bullshit, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Even if it's accurate, it's not a good reason. It's still stupid.
Any artist could have done that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I think
I don't buy that reason because the whole it just makes it's alien, yes, but the whole point of the Skrulls in the Secret Invasion storyline is that the Skrulls can blend in so perfectly you cannot tell that they're alien. And so you have this intro that looks like dog shit, and it's very obvious that it's not, that it's, AI doesn't fit with the theme at all.
We started watching the screeners, and our producer Ruben, who's also our head graphic designer, just an incredible artist, immediately was like, that's an AI intro. Like, as soon as he started watching and pointed it out, like, figured it out immediately. And so, like, that's a great point. It doesn't match the Skrulls. This isn't an Age of Ultron show. This is a Skrull show, and so it doesn't necessarily fit the tone. It's something I don't think the Twitter outrage would be enough for them to change if it wasn't for the fact that so many artists and creators who worked on the show that weren't aware of this, who had no hand in the intro credits, because it's just the one studio who did the intro credits.
And a lot of comic artists, like I've seen a lot of comic artists that currently work for Marvel have been complaining about it too. So there's a lot of people not happy about this.
A lot of people on the inside who worked on it who are not at all happy. And so I think that could lead them to changing it. But I think it's also highlighted that this is still a show that there were thousands of people who worked really hard on us to give us a pretty cool thriller. And Adam, I want to throw it to you to focus on a few more of the positives before we dive into spoilers, because one, you gave us a wonderful review from episode 1, and you're going to be bringing week-to-week reviews of this show. So talk to me about that one, as well as a pretty interesting interview you may or may not have had. Was it your 10th? Tell me about your interview, man.
Yeah, so the interview was quite the experience. Obviously, having the chance to sit down with Secret Invasion director Ali Salim, get a few minutes with him to talk about some political inspiration. Shout out to Garrett for giving me a little bit, the idea to spark that question. And then obviously shout out to you as well, TJ, for this was being my first interview. I was so incredibly nervous about the process and about getting to talk to somebody that like I've been a Marvel fan my entire life. Like since I was a little kid, these movies have always meant, and now TV shows have always meant so much to me. When I was a kid, they were a form of like escapism. This universe was just like somewhere that I could watch and be like, man, like I wish I was a part of this. Like, obviously not, something like the Battle of New York where there's aliens flying overhead and people are, all this chaos is going on. Maybe not something like that, but I'm like, man, like it'd be really cool to like be in this universe. So
like
it was
Kate
just
Bishop.
yeah, right, exactly. So like to get to be to talk to somebody that was involved in making one of these projects, just like if you had told me when I was a kid or even dating back to like a year ago before I joined Agents of Fandom that I was going to get to do that, I would have been absolutely over the moon. And it was a great experience. He was a delight. I was nervous. It shows a little bit, but I'm excited to get to do some more of it and kind of help, beat those nerves back, with more, get more reps in and stuff like that. And then, as far as the reviews, I'm really, really excited to continue covering the show week to week. Obviously had the episode 1 review dropping today, but it's like doing it with The Mandalorian and with Succession, and then now onto Secret Invasion. It's like part of the joys of watching these shows. It's like you're getting to watch this story like unfold over 6 to 10 weeks, depending on what show you're watching. But then it's like if you're covering it week to week, it almost feels like you're also telling your own story, like alongside of it, like with like your experience watching it, your interpretation of it, like you're guessing what's going on, how you're handling, like thinking about everything. So it's like 2 stories happening side by side. So it's so fun to get to write about this kind of stuff and share my thoughts with everybody. And I'm really excited to keep being able to do that. So it's been really fun.
Shout out to Adam, because you absolutely crushed it in that first interview. I know the nerves can be scary. My first big Marvel interview was with our friend, our now friend, Anjali Bhamani. But when I didn't know her before, I got so nervous that I had my whole intro practice, and then I was like, "I'm with Anjali Bhamani," and then I just completely butchered her name off the very first at the start because I was so afraid. And so you absolutely crushed it, my dude. Shout out to you. You've been doing amazing work for this site for a long ass time, and
Well deserved.
we are
for
very
sure.
proud of
Thank you.
of how far you've come, but also very grateful for the work that you've put in. So shout out to Adam. But it's time to dive into some spoilers. So spoiler warning for episode 1 of Secret Invasion. If you haven't seen it yet, get the hell out. Join us on the podcast feed when you have. Everett Ross is a Skrull. This is the first thing that I want to talk about, because this is the intro that we had seen for a while, right? This was the marketing. Thing that they released with the secret passcode for the first 5 minutes, and we get to see them argue, and Agent Prescott fill us in basically on the synopsis of the show, kind of, and leading to a very cool chase, showing us the tone of this show, of how it's going to be, ultimately leading to a dead foe, Everett Ross, and him being a Skrull, kind of just really showing us all different aspects of how this show is going to work, all in the first 5 to 10 minutes. Garrett, I want to throw it to you first. What did you think of the intro?
I enjoyed it. I actually didn't watch the clip when they released it, so I organically watched it in the screener and thought it was a really nice way to set the tone. Kind of start on a high note, end on a pretty high note in similar fashion. What a fall he took at the end there, huh? Just like to see the image of him just like crawling towards Maria Hill is pretty nice. But yeah, that's I mean, we have been theorizing about Skrulls for, TJ on the Agents of Fandom for a long time. We started out getting in some beef about Skrulls like on Twitter a long time ago. So it feels like that was a nice way to set the tone. A kind of big player, not super big, but big enough to where we've been in a few projects actually, and has ties to a lot of things.
Really, really does. Adam, no, I want to ask you what you thought of the intro, but also I'll pose this question to everyone, and so Jordan, I'll get your take, and then Garrett on the reach around will get your thoughts as well. Yeah, I used that on purpose.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Adam, what do you think of the intro, and how long do you think Everett Ross has been a Skrull? Is anything that we have seen from him in the Black Panther movies and Captain America: Civil War, is any of this, was he a Skrull in any of this, or do you think this was the first appearance we saw him there?
So as for the intro, I thought it was awesome. I actually did watch it, when they had all that puzzle stuff coming out where they were releasing the different images and then deleting them after 3 minutes and putting together the password, all that mess of marketing stuff. That was awesome. It was incredibly hard to follow and then try to put together, but it was fun. It was really, really cool. I watched it then, and then obviously haven't seen the episode, I think 3 or 4 times now. I just that scene is so good, and it really just establishes, like you guys said, it just establishes the tone. Like, this shit is here, it's real, like it's happening now. And then it's like, as far as Everett Ross though, I think if you had asked people before the show, like, hey, give me your list, like building up like in the marketing and stuff in the trailers, like, give me 3 people that you think are probably going to be Skrulls. I think over like 70 to 80, probably like over 50%, I'll say, of the list would have probably had Everett Ross on them. Like, that was just a common thing. I think I saw a lot of people were like, Yeah, I think he's probably one of the Skrulls. But in terms of like how long he's been a Skrull, I really feel like what we saw from him in the first episode is pretty much the extent of it. I think the real Everett Ross is probably on his little farm and wherever it was in Wakanda Forever when they picked up and found him before he joined in that movie that still feels like a little bit like he's just kind of so him and Val are kind of put into a movie that didn't really need them. That I still feel like that's the only real weak part of that movie that I don't enjoy. But and we're not here to talk about Wakanda Forever. But I don't think that any of that stuff that we saw most recently in Wakanda Forever, I don't think that was a Skrull. I think that was just Ross. I really think this was somebody that I'm sure he knew that Ross had a pre-existing relationship with Prescott, and that was probably his best chance to go in and get that information. Like I'm sure whoever that Skrull was, like working with Gravik and them at New Skrullos, probably said like who's before they went into that mission, like, hey, what's our best chance of going in and getting this information? Then they weighed their options, and it was probably Ross. So then whoever it was switched into him, and then went for it. But I don't think this is the kind of thing, and I very well could be wrong. I've been wrong many times in the past about many things. So then maybe Ross has been a Skrull since the whole time we've known him, since Black Panther and all that. Who knows? But
Here's the thing, right? Is I think it can't be since Black Panther because of his injuries and their work on him in Wakanda. They would have figured that out. And so Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I think that's a different story. I don't know, but I think since the first one, like that was definitely Everett Ross in the first Black Panther. The other thing is, I don't think he can be just like chilling in a farm, right? Because then people still would have found a way to contact him. I feel like anybody that they're pretending to be at this point, unless, like you said, it's just a one-time thing, either dead or chilling in a pod somewhere, because I don't want to elaborate on that. Jordan, I want to throw it to you. How long do you think Everett's been a Skrull for?
I mean, time in Marvel is nebulous in general. I mean, we don't know how long it's been since Wakanda Forever that this story takes place. There's implications that this takes place, at least several years after Endgame, but there's no definitive time frame for it. At least
So
on
they
the
did
screen.
say it's like the most recent thing we've seen in the MCU. Like nothing that we've seen so far would be taking place after this.
Yeah, and that could, I mean, what Love and Thunder was at least 4 years after Endgame, from what they were saying, and Wakanda Forever, they didn't really give a time frame on that, but that could be anywhere in before that. So I mean, I think he was probably himself in Wakanda Forever, at least based off how he, I get that they take over and they have their memories and stuff like that, but they wouldn't necessarily have the same loyalty. Like he's very loyal to Wakanda, and he tries to keep his involvement, in contact with them on the down low and all that stuff.
Unless that's his mission, right? Unless that's the reason why he was replaced in the first place, because of his Wakanda connection.
Yeah, so that's basically kind of my thought process is he's not really important enough pre-Black Panther to warrant impersonation. And then after Black Panther, not only does he have the relationship with Wakanda, but he gets bumped up the ranks in the CIA, or I think it's the CIA that he's in.
Whatever it is.
So that's beneficial because they're already infiltrating the governments of the world. We know that for 30 years. So as soon as he bumps up the ranks in the CIA, he's a worth it target. And then, yeah, he has that gold mine of a connection with Wakanda. So I think it's a double whammy. I think before Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, between Black Panther and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, he was taken over.
And maybe Val is a Skrull, and she's the one who replaced him and got that done. The reason I thought that is because I honestly thought it was going to be a little bit of a red herring the way they were doing the narration at the beginning, where it's like the people you love most could be not whatever they said there, and they're showing Everett Ross, and I was like, I feel like they want us to think it's him, but maybe for him that's Val. And then obviously they showed him being a Skrull just a few minutes later, but I still think that could potentially be the case that Val is as well. But I want to kind of dive past that first part because there was just so much going on in this in this entire episode. And the next part that really stuck up to me is the common theme that keeps getting brought up from different people, whether it be Talos, our new president, our guy Dylan McDermott, my man from New Girl, and of course so many other things as well. That's my favorite spot that he's in. Dylan McDermott to me just makes Dermot Mulroney. I always mix up those two names. Dermot Mulroney to me just makes a perfect president.
I'm pretty sure there's an SNL skit about those two guys getting
exactly.
It's hilarious.
It's stupid. And you know what? You know whose like face I kind of always get mixed up with theirs, even though the name isn't similar at all. It's Timothy Olyphant. I kind of always feel like Timothy Olyphant and Dermot Mulroney for some reason just kind of look alike.
The hair.
Yeah, very Silver Fox, right? Anyways, Talos, the American government, Sonya, Olivia Colman's character, who just knocks it out of the park immediately as soon as she's on the screen, and Maria Hill at the end as well, who we'll talk more about, who they're all losing faith in Nick Fury a little bit, and they all feel like he has not been the same since Thanos. And no group feels this way more than the Skrulls themselves. We get to see new Skrullos. We know that they need a home. Nick Fury promises it to them, and Carol Danvers promises it to them, and then everybody just gets busy, and nobody's following through with that promise. Garrett, what do you think about the Skrulls' perspective? Because Captain Marvel kind of gave us a shift from comics where it's like the Skrulls are the bad guys, right? So it's like, no, they're just some people who need a home. That really hasn't changed. Obviously, there's been some people who have are going with some extremist views here. We're referring to Gravik and the people that he's leading. But at the end of the day, this is just a group that was promised a home and are now trying to get a home. What do you think about their perspectives, and how do you view them as antagonists in this series?
Well, I mean, they have a right to feel, in a way, slighted, of course. They're waiting 30 years plus for this promise to come through, this promise from Fury and from Carol Danvers, and it's not fulfilled. And now, in fact, Fury has left for a long time. And so I feel they have a right to be slighted, but I also feel, for narrative's sake, there's a lot about this that we don't know. Like, for what reason has there not, like, I don't assume that they just abandoned this, willy-nilly, right? Because we know that Nick Fury does in fact care for the Skrulls. I can assume, based on her character, that Carol Danvers didn't just stop caring for the Skrulls. So I assume there's more to the story here that we haven't gotten yet. But as of now, yeah, I'm sympathetic to the fact that they were promised something and it wasn't fulfilled. Although, violence and hostile takeover is not usually the answer to that. But I digress.
I'm usually pretty empathetic to things until somebody sets off a bomb and kills a lot of people. That's
multiple bombs.
That's usually where I make a pivot. Adam, what do you think about the Skrulls' perspective and how they are kind of being antagonists in this series? Do you think it's a jump from what we saw in Captain Marvel, or it kind of makes sense thematically?
No, I think it really makes sense. And I wrote about this in my episode 1 review, that famous Tony Stark quote that we've seen so many times in the MCU, the idea that we create our own demons. Like, this is Fury's problem to solve, because it was his problem that he left and, didn't pay any attention to when he needed to. So now it's like, if he had worked on this, and I assume we're going to find out, they say, like, he's up on Saber. I think the president says, like, he can't come back when he's busy building a multi-conglomerate something. And you're like, okay. So I assume we're going to learn more about that in future episodes, like what all he's been doing up there. But it's like, it had to have been important because Garrett, like you said, like, he does care about the Skrulls. Like, this is established that he does care. So it's like, I would be hard pressed to believe he just went up there and forgot. But they have every right to be mad. And this is the kind of thing that if he would have just taken care of this when he was supposed to, like earlier, and like really put the work in with him and Carol and all that stuff, like this probably wouldn't be happening. Like this is his own fault. And it's like, now it's his mess to clean up. So I think, like you said, they lose me a little bit when they kill. I think they said like 2,000 people or however many people, like a lot of people in that plaza got killed. That's probably not the best way to go about it. But at the same time, like they don't have any reason to continue putting their faith in Fury. Like they've been waiting for all these years, and he was still up on Saber before all this stuff started going down. Like it wasn't like he was down like actively working on that. Like maybe he was actively working on it up there. Who knows?
I assume like they found other planets, right? Because we know there's other planets via other space movies, but they're not just gonna find an empty planet, so they're probably gonna have to like displace a civilization in order to move another one. So there's like ethical dilemmas at play, I would imagine that are much deeper than just like, let my friends in.
Which is
So
essentially what Gravik did, right? Is say, fuck your ethical dilemmas. We can survive radiation. You cannot. And we're going to use this world because you have taken too long. Jordan, what do you think about the kind of main plot of this is why they are the antagonists?
Well, I mean, overall, I like the idea. I mean, and even Talos mentions that it's not all the Skrulls that are feeling this way. And we even see that as they go, that it's not all of them, that this is essentially a splinter faction, and just like, people, we're all humans, but obviously we have a bunch of differing ideas and ideologies and stuff like that. And so, I mean, it's neat to see that explored here, because too often, Marvel, any sci-fi thing, you tend to take a species and that's their whole, everybody is the same. Even in Marvel, we've had that with Kree, or in the comics, the Skrulls are all bad. Star Wars is a big example of that, where one species, that's you meet one and that's how everybody is, and
happens in real life oftentimes.
Yeah. So I like that they're exploring that aspect of it here, because it allows them an opportunity to get into that nuance. And this feels like, I mean, just based off this and the second episode, don't really talk about, but you can see that they are taking some time to go into these nuanced areas. Maybe not as deep as we'd want, but it's certainly deeper than some of the others. And using the Skrulls for that, I think, is a really unique opportunity to handle that type of storytelling, because you can have both, and we've already seen, you have both good Skrulls and you have villainous Skrulls and stuff like that. But what I like about Gravik and his group, while they are extremists, you can see the point that they're making. Even Talos says that he's pretty fed up with waiting and not happy about this. So we get into some, the ends justify the means territory as well, which is always fun with villains. But what I like about Gravik specifically is because he's surrounded himself by people who believe in the cause, but it's very clear that Gravik is out for himself. And he is very much a villain. He is all about being bad and does not care. And it's good to get that balance. Like, you have the extreme factor from the bad Skrulls, but you can see how they came to it. But with Gravik, you get the straight up villain aspect of it, someone that you can root against, even as you can understand the rest of them.
Kingsley Benadir is doing such an amazing job in that villainous role. And I think you brought up a great point, Jordan, about how he's just like a classic dictator, right? Of like how he kind of brainwashes the people around him, where using fear as a tactic, he's talking to one of his generals or whatever that person's rank was, and he says like, is this to protect me, or is this to protect the cause? And his general says, like, you are the cause. And he says, no, it's home. But you can tell, like, that's how
Mhm.
his people view it. It's like, I am fighting for you, my leader. And very Emperor Palpatine-esque almost, of like, yes, it's the cause, but no, it's really for what, not necessarily my own gain, but my own
Mhm.
agenda. Whatever I say is the cause. And I do think there's also a lot of that's a perfect example of it right there. But I really want to pay attention again when episode 2 comes out next week, and then further moving episodes about all the different foreshadowing that comes in this show, because I think there's a lot of dialogue that is really, really intentional. We see right off the get go, we talked about it in those first 10 minutes, how they really just show you what this series is going to be right off the get go. We have the confusing information, back and forth, what on earth is going on dialogue. We get the chases, we get the crazy reveals, and we see that in the dialogue as well with their conversations. But another one we talked about earlier with Maria Hill and her disappointment in Nick Fury. There's a specific line of dialogue that I want to touch on again at the end of the end of our discussion here, but even more between Gaia and Talos. We learn Soren has passed away, and this is news to Gaia, which, even though she's been kind of turned extreme by a very reasonable thought process, we don't have a home and I want a home, she's kind of going about it the right way, right? New Skrullo. She's there trying to help other people. Obviously, we know she does some pretty bad things as she's carrying a bomb to the people. She's the one who delivered it to them. But thankfully, has some second thoughts. There's a redemption arc here. She's turning things around a little bit. We love a morally ambiguous Amelia.
Sympathetic terrorist.
We love a morally ambiguous Amelia Clark. Whether it be Game of Thrones, whether it be Solo, whether it be Secret Invasion, we love a morally ambiguous Amelia Clark. And so it's very relatable from her standpoint as well. And the very last words, apparently, that Soren, her mother, who we of course met in Captain Marvel, say to Gaia, who was the little child, in case anyone missed that we didn't that we met in Captain Marvel as well, was find Gaia, bring her back, using the power of family, just like they do in the Fast and the Furious, to
Oh,
save the world. It's really, when you get down to it, it's really the exact same thing. But the foreshadowing thing I want to talk about the most is the chess match between Maria Hill and Nick Fury, and the conversations that they have there. And she, like everybody else prior in the episode, is calling Nick out and just saying, like, you were not the same when you came back from the blip. You are not the same person. You don't have it. Sonya was calling him out and saying, you didn't even notice my men. She's calling him out and saying, the Nick Fury I knew is always a step ahead. And the fact that you're not right now, somebody is going to get hurt. And she says that to him. She says, you are not prepared for this fight. And because you're not prepared, somebody is going to get hurt. And the biggest twist that I don't think many of us saw coming at the beginning of this episode when we started watching is a lot of us are kind of going, who's a Skrull? Who's a Skrull? Is Maria a Skrull? Maria wasn't a Skrull, but apparently Maria Hill has died. R.I.P. Maria Hill, in this since the beginning, in one of our favorite shows, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., every now and then. And she's been one of the characters that has been with us since the debut of the MCU, basically. And now Maria Hill is apparently no longer with us. Garrett, is this something you at all saw coming, and what did you think of the choice?
No, I didn't really see it coming, and I think it's a fantastic way to set the tone at the end of your first episode. I think we start off with a bang, revealing that one of our, kind of major players in the MCU is a Skrull, and then we end it with a Skrull impersonating Nick Fury and taking out pretty much one of the most familiar characters in the MCU to people who have been following the entirety of it for, even casual watchers just who watched after the fact and don't have like the Agents of Shield stuff or whatever. Like this is still, like Adam said in his review, an 11-year MCU vet that we're killing off in the final seconds of our premiere episode. So I think it's a really strong stance. And I think it's a tone-setting way and I think what they hoped was we were going to be able to talk about this, this crazy ending for week to week, and instead we're talking about the AI intro, which is a little bit of a bummer. But hey, they made their bed.
Jordan, what do you think about the twist? Did you see it coming? Did it surprise you? What were your thoughts? But then also, do you think this is at all a case of some fridging with we're killing off a female character, it's a motivated male character, or does it not kind of fit that mold because Nick Fury was already pretty damn motivated, and this, if anything, is gonna take steam out of his sails a little bit as opposed to motivating him further?
I mean, in the traditional how we look at fridging of characters, I don't think it necessarily fits because it's not. I mean, yeah, he's already got motivation. We know what this, his goal and his story is, generally speaking, overall. And we've seen him lose people in the past too. I mean, he's been with the Avengers and all. I mean, he's no stranger to losing people and allies and stuff like that. So I'm not necessarily thinking that will, serve as a motivator for him. I think there's definitely discussion to be had about killing off another female character, but that's another discussion. I mean, I love Kobe Smulders, and I've always thought she's been such an excellent addition to Marvel. I just think they've never known what to do with her, and have kind of always. I saw a great meme that pretty much summed up my thoughts. Is like the only other person who didn't deserve Kobe Smulders more was Ted Mosby in How I Met Your Mother. And it's like, yeah, because she's great, and anytime she's on the screen or does something in Marvel, it's great, it's memorable, but they didn't really have her do a whole lot, and now they're killing her off, which I get it, and I think it works overall, and I wasn't really expecting it. Like I got the foreshadowing from what she was saying. Honestly, I expected other people to die and for her to step up. I always kind of saw her as, and what I'd hoped was she would eventually take over the Nick Fury role and kind of be a successor. But now that's not going to happen.
About it.
You're
And
muted,
there
you go.
she could get her. They could start her own show about it. They could get her own little team, and we will call it Agents of Shield, and it will be a massive success. Adam, I think the most devastating part of this is that Maria Hill's last words are, "It was you." She sees Nick
Yeah,
Fury
that hurt.
as her killer, and even as a viewer, we're kind of seeing her get shot by Nick Fury, and until we see the complete change of expression and learning it's Gravik, we have that 1 second of hope of being like, oh, did Nick just figure out Maria was a Skrull and that's why he's shooting her? No, it wasn't that. What was kind of like going through your mind when you were watching that?
First off, I just want to say this does come as a big surprise because I think, like many people, I was really expecting some more like backstory from her, like you guys have said, and like Britt said in the chat, we haven't really been given a real definitive reason to care about her. And I was really hoping to get that from the show. But what I would like to do now is take this opportunity to debut a theory that I have had since I watched this the first time that I have not told you guys or anybody, that I have been sitting on. I wanted to debut it on the podcast. So everybody's been talking about, well, maybe Maria Hill was a Skrull and she's not really dead, this and that. So Maria Hill's not dead, and nor was she a Skrull. Now think back to what's another show that everybody's been, or another movie project tied to this that everybody's been talking about. Like, how long has Nick Fury been a Skrull? Well, he's been a Skrull since, what's a pretty common answer? Since the Winter Soldier. What happened to Nick Fury in the Winter Soldier? He got shot and got the absolute shit kicked out of him. And we all thought he was dead, to the point where he was laying there in a hospital bed, and they went up and touched and rubbed his beautiful bald head. And then they all said goodbye to him. And like many people, I thought he was dead, like watching that at the time. You know, we've been with Nick Fury for a long time. I thought he was dead. How did Nick Fury survive that?
Tetrodetoxin B.
Developed by Bruce Banner, slows the pulse to 1 beat a minute, can get you out of anything. And that Fury is the one that had access to that. Who was
This is my
standing?
same theory. I was texting it to Garrett as you were going through it. I had the same thought. Let's go.
Let's go. Like, he's the one that had access to this. Like, and what's the last thing we see of Maria Hill? He's literally like standing over her, and then it cuts. Like this, she is alive. We are gonna see more from her character in the second half of the season, and it's gonna be from that, and it's gonna be an awesome callback. That's gonna be why, and it's gonna be an awesome call. And maybe we even get like a little flashback scene with something like even maybe a little bit of something new or whatever. Like when he tells her about it, like in a, like an off-screen, would have in the past would have been an off-screen moment or something. That then just like ties, like a nice callback, ties it all back together. She's still alive, like, and it's like, oh, that was crazy. We all thought maybe that she was a scroll, but it was really this other thing. That's I've been hanging on to that literally since I watched it. That was like the thought that popped into my head, but it's just so hard. You guys know me. I love talking about this shit. So I wanted so bad to come on and be like, and just tell you guys immediately. But yeah, that's my theory. She's alive. We're going to see her later because of that, the tetrodetoxin B.
I was going to say that in our chat, and my thought process was, no, I'm going to save this for the podcast. So I'm happy I didn't text it to you and ruin this moment for you, because yes, I was also thinking that was a possibility. And Garrett mentioned something in, we were just texting as I brought this up to you, as I was saying, I think this is where he's going. And then also people in the chat are talking about it. But like, we know from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that Nick Fury will go a long, long way to not let his inner circle die, right? Like, Coulson has died 12 times and he's still out here. You know what I mean? Like, so I think, wouldn't that be crazy if, like, when there is this big Maria Hill reveal that she's still alive, she just, like, walks in with Coulson and it's like, ha ha ha, we're both still here. That'd be crazy. I would love that.
I think it's either her or I think Soren is still alive. I think there's going to be a reveal of one of those women still being alive. And I hope that's the case too, because, you know.
Same.
So this takes me to
I'm pretty sure she's dead. I'm about 95% sure she's dead.
This takes me to my next theory, because I had two going into one. It was this one that was like, "Ooh, are we gonna get a tetrodetoxin B reference back from Winter Soldier?" And she wasn't actually dead; it was just pretend. And then I had one other because, like that's I'm losing my train of thought here because literally my anxiety just went, TJ, you're trying to make it sound like you get the credit for this, but Adam was the one who just displayed that theory perfectly. So don't try and make it sound like it was yours. That's what my inner monologue was just shouting at me, and it made me lose my train of thought. But I don't want to theorize too much because, of course, we've seen the second episode, and I don't want to accidentally reveal something that comes with that one. And so I do have one other theory that has nothing to do with that one. And to me, it was just thinking of, like, what could be a twist that would really make us go, oh, fuck. How are they going to get out of this one? And for me, I think that twist is Talos is already dead. And the reason I think that is, like, there's why, like, obviously it's like, yes, this is something that people were talking about in one of our chats of, like, is there an in-story reason that Ben Mendelsohn still, like, Talos still looks like Nick Fury's old boss, other than the fact that it's just that's what Ben Mendelsohn looks like? That's, like, what do us humans have, or what do these humans in the show have to prove that, like, one Skrull isn't actually another Skrull? If they're so good at impersonating others, they can impersonate each other too. Maybe not well enough that the other Skrulls can't notice, but well enough that the humans aren't going to notice. So what if Talos is actually just not here? This is one of Gravik's men, and he's just always getting intel about what Fury's doing, so he can stay a step ahead of Fury the way Fury always used to do to others.
There's like one scene where Amelia Clark's guy is like about to go retrieve the bombs, and the same general that you were talking about earlier, who gets like questioned by Gravik, is like, he like gives her this like weird ass look,
Right.
and then like shuts the door, and they should have like no reason to be suspicious of her because she's like should be a top, agent who's doing all their bidding. But he gives her like this really weird look and then shuts the door. So that theory could have some credence. I like that.
There's
As
so.
we're
There you go.
I just want to say, just give a quick, like, I love that theory. I'm always down for anything that's like a big twist like that. But I just want to give a quick shout to Ben Mendelsohn, because one thing I noticed when I was like, he was one of my standouts, like him and Amelia Clark, like obviously Kingsley Benadir is also outstanding, but him and Amelia Clark were like, when watching the first 2 episodes, were the biggest like standouts performance wise for me. And today I noticed that scene, in the first episode when they get in that fight with the art guy. I don't even remember his name. They had they get in the fight with that guy, and then Talos keeps telling him like, I've got it. Don't do anything to him. Like and I think his plan was to maybe, get him to a point where they could like close to incapacitate him, get some answers out of him, and then like just knock him out or something. And then like Fury ends up shooting him and killing him. And then like he extends a hand to help him up, and he just looks at, and it was like the way he says, he was like, I said no. Like that like hit me, because I was like, he keeps talking about like all this stuff, like how much this turmoil is like weighing on him. Like all of his people are fighting back and fighting against him. And that just like hearing him say that, like I know I'm just going off on a Ben Mendelsohn rant here, but like just hearing him say that to me, it really just hit, because I was like, this is somebody that would have easily killed him, like if given the chance. Like he was trying to kill, like that other guy was trying to kill Talos, even though Talos wasn't trying to kill him. And then like it was that much that even if it meant like saving his life, like he still did not want Fury to do that, because it's just like that's inside, like that, all that stuff, like that compassion and that empathy and stuff is inside it. Like, and I think he realizes that these are just kind of like lost, misguided souls, which I guess now that I'm thinking about it also kind of ties back. So about then again, like then I'm saying like, well, maybe he wouldn't be a Skrull because he wouldn't have cared. But then I'm like, also, if he would have probably just been acting anyway. Now I'm like getting in my own head about like, like whether I can do who I can and can't trust and stuff. So this show is really doing it to me. It's crazy.
Absolute beauty of the show right here is I think that is exactly the feeling that they're trying to create in our heads, exactly. And if this is actually Talos, to kind of show to that empathy and why he wouldn't have wanted to Fury to kill that guy, is I think he empathizes for all of these people because his daughter's one of them. And he's sitting there pissed off that like the only reason I'm not more upset about this, Fury, is because I'm friends with you and I know you're not doing it maliciously. I know you're just struggling and you're not purposely letting us down, but bro, you're fucking letting us down. And it's truly an incredible storyline to see kind of how he balances it and to see where this goes as well. I'm excited for episode 2. To me, I view episode 1 as introducing the story and the type of story we're getting, and then episode 2 really opens up the scope. It really adds perspective to what is actually going on in this situation, and we learn a lot more about that. So without going into detail, we do have a very exciting show next week when we're going to be talking about episode 2 with Matt and Lauren from the Hops Geek News podcast, Secret Invasion. We got a fun little trend going where every single week we got a brand new guest who has never been on the podcast before. So make sure you tune in to the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your podcast. Rate it 5 stars. Leave a nice little review. Also, subscribe to our brand new podcast, Cinema Sibs, hosted by Rachel Leishman, as well as all the other pods on the Agents of Fandom network, including Ticket to Reality, Fandom Academy, Listen 3000, and the previous 2 I just mentioned, of course. Those watching us on Twitch, we thank you for tuning in. Those watching us on YouTube in the future, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Before we get out of here, there's 2 specific things I want to talk to you about, Jordan. One, tell us where we can find you and a little bit about what you do. Talk to us about Cinelinks. And then secondly, I want to know about, 1, what is Real Outreach? Give us a nice little explanation for our people. And 2, I love it. And so how can the Agents of Fandom get involved with helping out?
Well, you can find me pretty much anywhere. I always just use my name for everything. So you search for me using the name I have right here, you'll find me. It's not hard to find my goofy face on various social media. Generally, the one I mainly use is Twitter, even though it's something else these days. But you can find me just about everywhere. Just I have different levels of how often I use them, mostly when I remember to use them. But yes, you can also find a lot of my work and writing on cinelinks.com. Started that, gosh, over a decade ago now, and it's been a while.
Very nice.
Been writing a whole bunch of stuff from that. It's opened up a lot of doors and opportunities for me, so that you can find my writing in a whole bunch of places now, which is nice. So if you fancy reading some of my thoughts, I'm around. But yeah, Twitter is probably the best place if you just want some of my random thoughts and seeing me call out dipshits for saying terrible things. I do that.
You do dunk on some people sometimes. I love seeing it.
Man, somebody's got to do it. So, if I don't call out the chodes, who will? So,
The true hero.
We need your sacrifice.
Yeah.
Not the hero, not the hero we need, but the hero we deserve.
Yeah. But as for Real Outreach, that's a little charity I started back in 2018. What we do is we take underprivileged kids from foster agencies and other kid organizations locally, and we take them to enjoy a night at the movies. Because a lot of times movies are just too expensive for them to go to. I mean, shoot, even average families are struggling to get to the movie theater these days for new releases. And it's, it's a big thing. You go to school and you hear everybody talk about the latest, Marvel movie or whatever, and you couldn't get to it. You feel like you're left out of the conversation. And that's kind of one of the gaps that we try to fill, on top of, because there's charities for everything. They get food, they get clothes. There's charities to take care of their actual physical needs. But what so often happens with underprivileged kids is they aren't allowed to just be kids. Everybody's so concerned with making sure that they're fed and clothed, which is important. But there's a lot more to it being a kid than just that, and a lot of that gets left out, and that's kind of what I wanted to do, was give them a space where for 2 hours they could just get that theater experience, see the latest releases, and just forget the world. Movies have always been a great escape for me. I grew up, my family, we could only ever watch maybe one movie in a theater a year. But it was always a huge experience for me. Led me to, film school and all that stuff, and obviously what I'm doing now. So I want to make sure that others have that same opportunity, and that's pretty much what we do. We try to do at least 6 events a year. It's tough. During the pandemic, we got a projector system and blow up screen and stuff like that. So we did some like drive-in style events during the pandemic, so people could stay in their cars and not have to interact with everybody else. But we're back to in theater events. This year, last year we really came back, and we've already had a couple events this year. We got Ninja Turtles coming up. That's going to be our next one. I'm actually, before I hopped on with you guys, I was in the process of working out the fundraiser details for that to hopefully go live later this week. So that's what we have going on next. But I mean, our fundraisers, we always need help monetarily. We raise money specifically for the events themselves. We also put gift baskets together for kids stuck in the hospital over Christmas. And there's a lot of just administration costs that go with it, from domains and all that stuff, just to keep us going. So every little bit goes a long way. But I always tell people the absolute best way to help us and support us is to track us down online on Twitter at Real Outreach and give us a follow. The more we can spread the word, the more eyeballs that we have on it. It's a completely free way to help us grow, because eventually I'd like to go beyond, our local events and stuff like that.
Well, as soon as you want to expand from some local, if you ever need to have a man on the ground in Canada, you just you let me know. I'd love to help out. Make sure you follow at Jordan Mason on Twitter, but also at Real Outreach as well. It's a wonderful cause. Jordan's doing some incredible work over there. So make sure you check it out, follow, and support.
That's
And make
at
sure you,
REEL, by the way.
That's right.
yes, REEL. You can see it on the shirt. Those
Right.
watching us on video, real as in a movie reel, not real as in the opposite of fake. Although it's also that. Like it's not a
Huh.
fictional
Yeah.
thing. It's a real thing as well. So little double entendre for you. Make sure you follow that on the socials as well as myself and my two wonderful co-hosts, Adam and Garrett, as well. On behalf of them and our wonderful producer behind the scenes, Ruben. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next week with Matt and Lauren from Hops Geek News talking more Secret Invasion. And in the meantime, we've been having some Secret Invasion articles dropping basically every single day on agentsfandom.com, including Adam's incredible reviews. And you can also find his interview and all of our other great content on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page. So make sure you check that one out, and we will see you next week, everyone. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.